Chapter 221. Fortunately, it was impossible for Tang Zhongyi to have any thoughts about a patient, and Gu Xingyin's acting skills had reached the point of perfection. The two of them finished everything in silence. "Good night, Zhao Zhao." Tang Zhongyi gently kissed Ning Zhao's forehead. Looking at Ning Zhao's motionless appearance, he only felt a sting in his heart. His Zhao Zhao would no longer look at him with a smile, pull his sleeve and give him a good-night kiss. Tang Zhongyi lay beside Ning Zhao and saw that Ning Zhao had no reaction to him lying in bed. Seeing her close her eyes, Tang Zhongyi turned off the light and opened his eyes in the darkness for a long time. Contrary to him, there were familiar people and familiar breaths around her. Gu Xingyin soon fell asleep. In the following days, Tang Zhongyi put aside the company's affairs and accompanied Gu Xingyin wholeheartedly. Every day, he took care of everything for her, pushed her in a wheelchair for a walk, and even took her to the piano room. "Zhao Zhao, don't you like to play the piano? Play a song for me, okay?" He coaxed her softly. Gu Xingyin sat in front of the piano. She looked at the familiar things in front of her, and her eyes seemed to turn slightly. Tang Zhongyi was ecstatic. He didn't dare to disturb her. He could only hope that the piano could make her come out. Gu Xingyin reached out and placed his hand on the piano keys. However, she only played a few notes messily before she stopped moving. Tang Zhongyi was very disappointed, but there was only a gentle smile on his face. He wanted Ning Zhao to try again, but found that Ning Zhao seemed to be a little resistant, so he could only give up for the time being. On the way back, the two met Yang Huiying. Yang Huiying had done such a thing, so she hadn't dared to ask about Ning Zhao's recent situation these days. But she clearly felt that the atmosphere in the Tang family was very dull these days. She guessed that something must have happened to Ning Zhao. She didn't dare to face Ning Zhao, so she walked around the piano room every day. Unexpectedly, Tang Zhongyi pushed Ning Zhao around the entire Tang family's mansion today. Seeing Ning Zhao sitting in a wheelchair and seemingly unaffected, she was still surprised. Tang Zhongyi didn't like this woman from the bottom of his heart. He originally planned to pretend that he didn't see her and directly leave with the Zhao Zhao. But unexpectedly, Ning Zhao, who had been quiet as if she didn't exist, suddenly became agitated the moment she saw Yang Huiying. She glared angrily at Yang Huiying, and her mouth kept calling out for her parents. Yang Huiying only felt that the other party's eyes were filled with deep-rooted hatred, nailing her to the ground and making her unable to move. Tang Zhongyi was shocked by this scene. It wasn't until Ning Zhao seemed to want to stand up by herself that he realized that her foot was still injured. He bent down to comfort the agitated Ning Zhao and shot a sharp gaze at Yang Huiying. Yang Huiying felt a chill run down her spine, but Tang Zhongyi didn't say anything. Instead, he covered Ning Zhao's eyes and brought her back to the room. Yang Huiying heaved a sigh of relief. She had thought that Tang Zhongyi was going to do something to her. However, she had underestimated the situation. The next day, when she came to Tang Qian's room, there was only one person in the room. "Mr. Tang?" She looked at the man she missed. She was a little happy, but there was also some uneasiness in her heart. Tang Zhongyi turned around and looked at her expressionlessly. "Miss Yang, can you explain what you did to Zhao Zhao 4 days ago in the afternoon?" Chapter 222. Yang Huiying was a little flustered. "No one knows what you've done." She comforted herself. She looked at Tang Zhongyi in confusion. "What 4 days ago? What happened?" Tang Zhongyi hated her face. "Not many people know about Zhao Zhao's parents. We checked one by one, and you're the only one." He stared at Yang Huiying. "Shao Qian told me that he told you about it, and you had an agreement that no one was allowed to say anything about it." Yang Huiying forced herself to calm down. "I know something about Miss Ning Zhao, but Mr. Tang, didn't you not let me get close to Miss Ning? Everyone in the Tang villa knows that I, Yang Huiying, have to take a detour when I see Miss Ning." Tang Zhongyi looked at her. "Then how do you explain Zhao Zhao's reaction when she saw you?" Yang Huiying defended herself. "How would I know? You have to ask Miss Ning about this. Maybe I had an unpleasant encounter with her before, so she instinctively didn't like me." Tang Zhongyi looked at her silently for a while. "Since Zhao Zhao doesn't like you, you don't have to come to the Tang family in the future. It's best not to let me know that you really have something to do with this matter." Yang Huiying was not convinced. You fired me for no reason. Tang Zhongyi had already slammed the door and left. The Tang family's housekeeper handed an envelope to Yang Hui. I'm sorry, Miss Yang, the Tang family has been busy recently, and the young master's upbringing. Yang Huiying snatched the envelope from the housekeeper's hand. Don't make excuses. Isn't it just not coming? This girl doesn't care. Tang Zhongyi stood in front of the window and watched Yang Huiying's figure disappear from the Tang family. His eyes were deep. Do you think that if you don't admit it, I can't do anything? Yang Huiying's recent days were quite difficult. Although her talent in the music academy was not top-notch, it was still above average. However, there were various activities in the academy recently, and the tutors seemed to have completely ignored her and didn't take her out at all. For students like her, the most important thing during school was to be taken out by their tutors to see the world. At the same time, it was an opportunity to show themselves. If a large orchestra took a fancy to them, it was also a good way out. Especially for people like Yang Huiying, who had an ordinary family background and could only rely on herself. If the tutors didn't take her out, it could be imagined that she wouldn't have any chance to stand out until graduation. She lost her cool and went to look for her tutor. The reply he received was very perfunctory. I think your foundation is still not very solid. If you have the time to think about this, why don't you spend more time strengthening your foundation? Yang Huiying wanted to curse. Foundation? His foundation was not solid. If his foundation wasn't solid, how could he have been admitted to this nationally renowned music academy? However, she didn't dare to do so. To these students, the teachers were existences that held the power of life and death in their hands. No matter how disgusted he was, he still had to put on a smile on his face. Coldly watching Yang Huiying walk out, her teacher shook his head. Who knew how this female student had offended the Tang family? He couldn't protect her. Zhao Zhao, isn't it beautiful here? Tang Zhongyi and Ning Zhao were lying on a beach. The experts said that it was best to take Ning Zhao out for a walk more often. In the past 6 months, Tang Zhongyi had taken her to travel around. Of course, he chose places with beautiful environments and few people. For example, right now, the two of them were on a private beach belonging to the Tang family. Chapter 223. Tang Zhongyi's efforts were not in vain. At least for half a year, Ning Zhao was no longer completely ignoring people. When he opened his mouth to ask a question, Ning Zhao would look at him, then lower her head and remain silent. Although he didn't get a response, Tang Zhongyi was very satisfied. Compared to before, it was a lot better, wasn't it? Gu Xingyin was also waiting. She could only let Ning Zhao recover slowly. The slower Ning Zhao recovered, the deeper Tang Zhongyi's dislike for Yang Huiying, and Yang Huiying's life would be more difficult. It's just that this man was wronged. Gu Xingyin sighed in her heart. Then speed up the progress a little. Ning Zhao's situation improved by leaps and bounds after the end of the trip. She seemed to have returned to the way she was when she first came to the Tang family. She could take care of herself, dress up her little rabbit, and pick out her favorite clothes from a pile of clothes in the wardrobe. On the first day they returned to the Tang family, Ning Zhao smiled at the Tang family who welcomed them back. Tang Zhongyi's hands were trembling slightly. The next day, Ning Zhao even took the initiative to ask to go to the piano room to practice. When the melodious music sounded again, Tang Zhongyi felt that he seemed to hear the sound of flowers blooming in the depths of his heart. Everything was getting better. Ning Zhao could live independently, but because of the previous lesson, Tang Zhongyi didn't dare to let her sleep alone in the room, so as before, the two still slept in the same bedroom. In the past 6 months, the Tang family had also fully seen Tang Zhongyi's deep affection for Ning Zhao. They had nothing to say about it. They could only wish the two of them that there would be no more twists and turns in the future. Good night, Zhao Zhao. Tang Zhongyi routinely kissed Ning Zhao's forehead. Ning Zhao's closed eyes suddenly opened. She raised her body and kissed Tang Zhongyi's forehead gently. Good night. Her voice was very small, so small that it almost made people think it was an illusion. But Tang Zhongyi still heard it, and for a moment he almost had an impulse to cry. Zhao Zhao, you just said good night to me? He was afraid that he was dreaming. But the little girl seemed to be shy. She turned around, facing him, closed her eyes, and went to sleep. Tang Zhongyi was left standing there, laughing foolishly for a while. In the end, he raised his hand and gently hugged the person in front of him. The person in his arms moved, but did not break free. Tang Zhongyi hugged his baby in his arms as if he was hugging the whole world. The figures of the two fit together firmly, as if they were born to be together like this. Tang Zhongyi had never been so satisfied. The next day, Gu Xingyin woke up in the arms of her lover. As soon as she opened her eyes, Tang Zhongyi, who had been looking at her, made a sound. "Good morning, Zhao Zhao." He saw that his little girl's eyes were still a little dazed. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered a few times before she finally opened them completely, revealing a pair of dark, clear eyes looking at him. "Good morning," Gu Xingyin replied out of habit. Then he suddenly realized something. Oh no, this was Ning Zhao's body. Tang Zhongyi only felt that today was extraordinarily beautiful. This was the happiest morning greeting he had ever received in his life. Gu Xingyin thought for a moment. Fortunately, there was the previous situation as a foreshadowing, and her situation was not too abrupt. The two people finished washing and came to the table. Since they had recovered a lot, Gu Xingyin was not stingy to give them another surprise. So, the masters of the Tang family looked at the girl in the white dress with a smile and said good morning to them. Chapter 224. Mrs. Tang almost dropped her chopsticks. Zhao Zhao, she was surprised and happy. She looked at her son standing next to Gu Xingyin. At the moment he was focused on Ning Zhao. That was great. She raised her hand and gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Her son finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. The Tang family was happy and harmonious, but Yang Huiying's life had been difficult. She was going to graduate next year. She watched her classmates go to concerts one by one. Many of them who were not as good as her started to sign contracts with bands, but she had no place at all. She couldn't get through to the mentors, so she started to recommend herself. But she didn't like low-level bands, and they didn't like her either. Yang Huiying was so worried that her hair turned white. Also, after graduation next year, every graduate had to submit their own work. The school would choose the best work to be performed at the graduation ceremony. Yang Huiying's music school was one of the best in Z country. Many international musicians and bands would be invited to the graduation ceremony. Students who could get on the stage of the graduation ceremony often had a bright future. But for herself, Yang Huiying looked at the white paper under her hand. She grabbed it into a ball and threw it into the wastepaper basket beside her. She had to start preparing for her graduation work now, but she was so distracted now. How could she make any good work? "Huiying, I'm going to be an intern at Shihai Band. Have you found a place?" It was Xiao Lin, her roommate. Xiao Lin and Yang Huiying had always been on bad terms. This time, she was obviously mocking her. Yang Huiying was the only one of the 4 people in the dorm who was still running around. Yang Huiying put on a fake smile and said, "No, a few small bands came to me, but I rejected them. I'm not in a hurry." It was obvious that she couldn't find a good band, but she still put on such airs. Xiao Lin sneered. She finished the last stroke of her eyebrow, picked up her bag and went out. Yang Huiying was left alone in the dorm. She grabbed her hair in annoyance and buried her head deep in her arms. In the end, she still found a small band that wasn't famous. She had no choice. She couldn't always stay in the academy. This way, she could be closer to the audience and gain more knowledge. She comforted herself. The small band didn't have any rules and didn't have any fixed performances. Often, they wouldn't have a chance to perform for a few days or even half a month. Sometimes, when business was good, they wouldn't rest for a few days. Yang Huiying was about to go crazy. She was tired to death every day. When she returned home at night, how could she still have the mood to compose? However, it was rare for a student from a famous school to appear in the orchestra. The conductor was very proud of her and would let her perform every time. Yang Huiying felt like a monkey in a circus. She regretted her blindness more than once. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have joined such a small band, even if she had to work in a big band. However, the contract had already been signed. No matter how much she disliked it, she had to endure it. Every day, the sound of the piano coming out of the Tang family's mansion became lighter and lighter. Ning Zhao's condition was also recovering at an extremely fast speed. She was now able to communicate with people normally, but she still knew how to read people. Moreover, she became Tang Qian's newest piano teacher. Although most of the time, she was the one playing the piano while Tang Qian blinked and listened. When Mr. Zhang came to the Tang family and saw Gu Xingyin, he was surprised and said that it was a miracle. Chapter 225. Auntie Zhao Zhao, this is for you. Tang Qian was holding a bunch of lilies that he had just picked from the garden. Gu Xingyin bent down to take it and smiled at Tang Qian. She still didn't like to talk and wouldn't talk to strangers. But she was already very close to the Tang family and would even act coquettishly sometimes. Tang Qian's mother once returned home from a trip and Gu Xingyin even went up to her and gave her a hug. Tang Qian's mother heard the girl's soft voice call her mother. She agreed with tears in her eyes. She was very happy to be Ning Zhao's mother. In the afternoon, it was time for Ning Zhao to practice the piano. Tang Qian sat by the side and listened to Auntie Zhao Zhao play the piano. He didn't really understand complicated things. He only thought that Auntie Zhao Zhao played the piano very well and looked very good when she played. Little Tang Qian always remembered what his little uncle said to him. Little Qian, when uncle isn't around, you have to spend more time with Auntie Zhao Zhao. She likes you the most. Auntie Zhao Zhao liked him the most. Tang Qian blushed at the thought. Auntie Zhao Zhao was prettier than the prettiest teacher in the kindergarten. He saw that Auntie Zhao Zhao often lowered her head and wrote something on a piece of paper. Tang Qian curiously walked over and found that it was full of dense notes that he couldn't understand at all. Auntie Zhao Zhao, what are you writing? Gu Xingyin's face showed a slightly shy smile. She blinked at Tang Qian and shook her head without saying anything. This was a song that Ning Zhao made in the original plot. Gu Xingyin slightly modified it. This song would be Gu Xingyin's surprise for her lover and also a choice for Yang Huiying. She would give Yang Huiying a chance. Her choice would also determine her future. The peaceful and beautiful days passed quickly. When Tang Qian was finally 6 years old and could enter primary school, Ning Zhao was also about to become an adult. And Yang Huiying was about to graduate. However, her graduation design was still not settled. Yang Huiying was alone in the small rented house outside. She was so worried that her hair was about to fall off. The boring performances of the small band day after day killed her inspiration. In her current state, if she submitted a design, it would be a problem for her to graduate successfully. How could she accept this? She was so hungry that she grabbed her purse in frustration and walked towards the mall. Tang Zhongyi brought Ning Zhao and Tang Qian out of the door. The current Ning Zhao was no different from an ordinary person just by looking at her appearance. She gradually stopped rejecting crowded places. Tang Zhongyi was ecstatic and would intentionally take her out. Today, she went out to buy something for Tang Qian. He was about to start school, and Tang Zhongxing's company was very busy. Tang Zhongyi happened to be off today, so he took him and Gu Xingyin out. I want Transformers, I want Spider-Man. Tang Qian walked as he calculated what he wanted to buy. He didn't forget to hold Gu Xingyin tightly with one hand, because his uncle had seriously told him that he was a man. Auntie Zhao Zhao was a little shy, so he had to protect her. Tang Zhongyi could not help but laugh. Little Qian, you're going to school, not opening a toy store. Tang Qian stuck out his tongue. At this moment, Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. The system notified him that Yang Huiying was nearby. Chapter 226. Yang Huiying came to the mall to buy some necessities. She never thought that she would meet an acquaintance here. Tang Zhongyi, the man who had left a mark in her heart for the first time. In the past year, she had been forcing herself not to think about him. She didn't expect to meet him in such a place. There was a girl standing beside her. Gu Xingyin's back was facing her, so Yang Huiying didn't recognize her. She subconsciously thought that Ning Zhao couldn't be here. However, when Tang Qian excitedly pulled Gu Xingyin to say something and she turned around to smile, Yang Huiying saw her clearly. How could it be? Wasn't Ning Zhao autistic? Didn't she not want to be stimulated and couldn't see strangers? Didn't her condition worsen after she told her about her parents' death? Then who was this girl who was smiling so freely in the middle of the bustling crowd? Yang Huiying only felt indignant. She had paid the price of staying away from the Tang family, but Ning Zhao didn't seem to be affected at all. How unfair was this? She felt like a shameless voyeur. She silently followed behind them and watched them enter the luxury stores that she didn't even dare to think about. She watched the three of them being intimate. Knowing that Tang Qian was complaining that he was hungry, they entered a dessert shop. Yang Huiying followed them in and sat next to them. There were 2 large pots of plants in front of the 2 tables. "Hello, what would you like to order?" The waiter looked at her with a smile. Yang Huiying glanced at them and pointed at one. She didn't know why she wanted to follow them, but there was always an indignant feeling in her heart. It made her look like she was torturing herself to look at the girl she had always been jealous of smiling happily. Gu Shengyin obviously knew that Yang Huiying was sitting behind her. It just so happened that this gave her a chance. She reached out to take out her phone from the small white rabbit bag she carried with her. No one noticed that a white piece of paper floated out and landed under Yang Huiying's table behind her. "Don't play with your phone when you're eating." Tang Zhongyi looked at her helplessly and dotingly. Gu Shengyin stuck her tongue out at her and opened the game without hesitation. Anyway, this man was just saying. He couldn't bear to take away her phone and make her unhappy. Only Yang Huiying saw the paper. She glanced at it. It was densely packed. It seemed to be a music score. She calmly picked up the piece of paper and put it into her handbag. Her heart was beating a little fast. "Miss, your coffee." The waiter's voice pulled her back from her thoughts. She absent-mindedly stirred the coffee in the cup until Tang Zhongyi and the other 2 finished eating and left. The coffee in the cup was already cold. She couldn't recall the past. Instead, she hurriedly returned to the small house she lived in. She even forgot the purpose of buying things. After locking the door, she carefully took out the piece of paper and read it slowly. The more she looked, the faster her heart beat. She was very sure that this music score wasn't a well-known piece. Moreover, the entire piece was handwritten and there were many traces of modification. There was no doubt that the composer was talented. Yang Huiying had seen Ning Zhao's talent in piano before, and it had fallen out of Ning Zhao's bag. This music score was most likely Ning Zhao's own work. Chapter 227. Yang Huiying walked absent-mindedly. Her contract with the orchestra ended today, and this could be considered her last performance. The location was a bar, and it wasn't too messy inside. After all, a bar that could afford to hire an orchestra was considered a bit high class. It was just that the people inside were all sorts of freaks and monsters. Yang Huiying didn't think that she would be fancied by a drunkard. "This girl looks pretty good." The fatty with the oily face looked at Yang Huiying drunkenly and chuckled. He then shouted at the person in charge of the orchestra, "How much for her to accompany me?" The manager of the orchestra had a difficult expression. Some members of their orchestra would occasionally have such services, but Yang Huiying was different. She wasn't an official member of the orchestra, and she was a student of a famous music academy. He said with a smile, "Sir, Miss Yang isn't a member of our orchestra. She's a student of Qingsong Academy. You should know Qingsong Academy." The fatty ignored his words and looked at Yang Huiying with wide eyes. He sneered, "Qingsong Academy? Do you think I'm an idiot? What kind of people are the students of Qingsong Academy? Why would they come to your lousy orchestra to be a piano player? Let me tell you." Yang Huiying only felt that all the customers in the bar were looking at her. This feeling made her feel very ashamed. If she could get everyone's recognition at the graduation ceremony, she wouldn't be like today, bullied by these vulgar people who only had a few bucks and pointed at as if they were watching a show. Her wavering heart finally made a decision. In the end, under the manager's apologetic smile, the fatty cursed and found another female musician. Yang Huiying didn't think that there would be such a dirty deal. She resisted the feeling of disgust and hurriedly finished playing the song and went home. She took out the white paper from the bottom of the drawer. "Sorry, Ning Zhao. Anyway, you're living a life of luxury in the Tang family. This kind of work is just icing on the cake for you. Moreover, if you can create a work like this, you can naturally create a second one. And right now, I urgently need it to save my life." "This is your work?" Yang Huiying's teacher looked at her in disbelief. Yang Huiying nodded. It took me nearly a year to write it out. Teacher, is there a problem with this? Her tutor read the score over and over again excitedly. After a while, she said to Yang Huiying, No. You're a genius. I haven't seen such an exciting work in years. I will recommend you to perform on stage at the graduation ceremony at the end of the month. He had already made up his mind. With such a talented student, even if Tang Kor wasn't happy with her, he couldn't let her go unnoticed. Yang Huiying walked out of the tutor's office with excitement in her heart. She knew that she was halfway to success. Soon it was the end of the month. On that day, Yang Huiying put on the clothes she had meticulously prepared, put on the most exquisite makeup, and stood on the stage of Pine Forest Academy. In front of her were countless internationally renowned musicians and first-class orchestras. Next, I'll be playing my piece, Sunshine. She bowed elegantly and slowly placed her fingers on the piano keys. Chapter 228. Clap, clap, clap. Yang Huiying's lips curled into a smile as thunderous applause sounded. She knew that she had succeeded. Sure enough, not long after she stepped off the stage, someone came to find her. Hello, Miss Yang. I'm the assistant conductor of the Lemon Tree Orchestra. May I take the liberty to ask if the song just now was composed by you? The man was dressed in a suit and leather shoes and had a kind smile on his face. Yang Huiying nodded her head reservedly. I used to be an intern in a small band. During this 1 year, I experienced all kinds of ups and downs. This song, Sunshine, was written based on my experiences during this year. The man frowned slightly but still nodded. After experiencing countless setbacks, you still didn't give up. Finally, you found your own sunshine. Miss Yang's song has a good meaning. Yang Huiying maintained her smile. The two chatted casually for a while, and the man gave Yang Huiying a business card before leaving. After the man left, Yang Huiying could not help but reveal a happy expression. The Lemon Tree Orchestra was one of the largest orchestras in the country. The chief conductor was an internationally renowned musician, and the rest of the members were also slightly famous musicians. A band like this wouldn't easily take the initiative to talk to people. Since the other party came to find her, it meant that they had the intention to invite her. She returned to the dormitory in a good mood. Everyone in the dormitory knew that she had stepped onto the big stage of the graduation ceremony and congratulated her. Even Shaolin smiled and congratulated her as if the previous grudge between them didn't exist. Congratulations, Huiying. Maybe our dormitory will have a great musician in the future. Yang Huiying glanced at her and said indifferently, I can't compare to you. You signed a contract with the West Sea Orchestra before you graduated. Shaolin's smile froze. She knew that Yang Huiying still minded her previous words, so she smiled and left. Yang Huiying sneered. When she was down, she hit her when she was down. Now that she saw that she had made a comeback, she wanted to get close to her. Did she really think that she was easy to bully? The person who contacted Yang Huiying earlier also returned to the orchestra. Elder Feng. He respectfully called out to a thin old man. How is it? The old man called Elder Feng asked. The man said, Miss Yang claimed that the song Sunshine was composed by her own hands. She wrote it based on her experience as an intern in a small band a year ago. Elder Feng frowned and said, the first half of the song is full of depression and despair. What happened to her in the band? That's why you don't even have the desire to live? Works were the best way to express one's emotions. A master like Elder Feng could naturally tell what the song was trying to express at a glance. Yang Huiying did not know that people were still discussing her work. In fact, Gu Xingyin did not have time to sign her name. Sunshine was just a name that Yang Huiying came up with based on her own understanding of the song. But she did become popular because of this work. The entire Academy of Music knew that there was a genius in the piano department. At the graduation ceremony, he had created works that were praised by world-class masters. Yang Huiying had received countless invitations, but she had not replied. She was waiting for news from the Lemon Tree Band. Yang Huiying was confident that she, who had created a masterpiece like Sunshine, would not be missed by any band with a good eye. Chapter 229. Gu Shengyin was well aware of these matters. But she was Ningzhao now, a Ningzhao who didn't care about the outside world, so she knew nothing about what Yang Huiying was doing. She prepared a big present for Yang Huiying. Ningzhao's 18th birthday came quickly. The Tang family treated Ningzhao like their own daughter. 2 years ago, they didn't dare let her see strangers because of her relapse. Now that Ningzhao was a lot better, Mother Tang decided to hold a big birthday party for her and announce Ningzhao's existence to the outside world. With the Tang family's influence, they invited 2/3 of the famous people in the capital. Because Ningzhao loved music, Mother Tang specially spent a lot of money to invite a famous local band to perform. Coincidentally, this band was the Lemon Tree Orchestra. Elder Feng, it's just a junior's birthday party. You don't have to go personally, right? His assistant whispered. Elder Feng shook his head. If I don't go personally, that old man Tang Qingshan will come to my house tomorrow. Tang Qingshan was Father Tang. Elder Feng knew his old friend's temper very well. Father Tang and Mother Tang stood on either side of Ningzhao and introduced her to the guests. Their behavior made everyone understand that this girl's status in the Tang family wasn't low. Some observant people noticed that although Ningzhao maintained a smile the whole time, she didn't say much. They even secretly sighed that this girl seemed to be too introverted. When the party was about to start, Gu Shengyin suddenly walked over to the chief pianist of the Lemon Tree Orchestra. Tang Zhongyi naturally followed her. Gu Shengyin glanced at Tang Zhongyi and he immediately understood what she meant. Can I borrow your piano for a while? Tang Zhongyi didn't understand why Zhao Zhao suddenly wanted a piano, but he still asked politely. The chief pianist of the Lemon Tree Orchestra didn't look too good. To be the chief pianist of the Lemon Tree Orchestra, he was a famous figure in the music industry. This was his personal piano. He had spent a lot of money to hire a famous master to make it, and he didn't let anyone touch it easily. Just as he was about to refuse, Elder Feng looked over and said, Lingji, do me a favor. Today is this young lady's birthday. Let her touch your baby. He had heard his old friend mention Ningzhao before and knew that she was Tang Zhongyi's future wife. Of course, he couldn't let her down. Since Elder Feng had spoken, the chief couldn't refuse. He stood up and walked to the side. He secretly swore in his heart, if this little girl's level is too low, no matter what, I will not let her continue to humiliate my beloved zither. It was as if Gu Shengyin couldn't see the expression on the first seat's face. She calmly sat down, then looked at Tang Zhongyi and smiled. This is a song for you? She winked at him. Tang Zhongyi looked at her gently. Their actions had attracted the attention of many guests. Hearing that Ningzhao had composed a song for the Tang family's second young master, they looked at the two of them and then looked at Tang Qingshan and his wife, who were not surprised at all. Many people began to question Ningzhao's status in their hearts. The moment Ningzhao's hand touched the piano keys, her entire temperament changed. Her expression was both sad and happy. Her slender and fair fingers danced on the piano keys, and strings of notes poured out from her fingertips. The expressions of the chief and Elder Feng changed. Chapter 230. Elder Feng's gaze was fixed on Gu Shengyin. The piano piece that this girl was playing was clearly the sunshine that he was very optimistic about. But she had clearly said, "This is a piece for you." In other words, this piece was her own original composition. Elder Feng and the chief pianist sitting at the side looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. It wasn't just the two of them. Everyone in the Lemon Tree Orchestra, as well as many music lovers among the guests present, had heard Yang Huiying's Sunshine. Now, comparing the two of them, the gap was too big. When Yang Huiying played this piece, although everyone was shocked, they felt that something was missing. Now that they heard Gu Shengyin's version, they realized that she didn't play the soul of this piece. The entire hall fell silent. Everyone was infected by Gu Shengyin's piano music. They seemed to see a girl in a bottomless darkness. There was no hope, no future, and no trace of light. She thought of seeking death. This might be freedom. She wouldn't have to struggle in this muddle-headed world. Tang Zhongyi clenched his fists tightly. He understood Zhao Zhao's song. He had never thought that Zhao Zhao would break down like that when she learned of her parents' death. She even thought of ending it with death. He only felt cold sweat on his back. Fortunately, God was not unkind to him. Fortunately, he had put down everything to be by her side at that time. Otherwise, he didn't know what would have happened. After reaching the extreme of despair, the style of the entire song suddenly changed. A person appeared by the girl's side. He patiently accompanied her, took her to watch the sunrise and sunset, accompanied her every minute of life, and took her to see all the beautiful things in the world. Little by little, he brought light into her world and pulled her out of the bottomless darkness. He was her salvation. When the song ended, Gu Xingyin was already in tears. Tang Zhongyi couldn't hold it in anymore. He rushed over and hugged her tightly. How could you? His voice was choked with sobs. He buried his head deep into Gu Xingyin's neck, covering his red eyes. The eyes of the Tang family members also turned red. They had watched Ning Zhao walk step by step, so they could naturally feel the deepest emotions in her works. Clap clap. At first, there were scattered applause, but later, all the guests stood up and applauded them. Elder Feng also stood up. He looked at Gu Xingyin strangely, as if he had discovered a rare treasure. The chief disciple's expression was not much better than his. At this moment, he had completely forgotten his previous unwillingness and began to think of a way to make Gu Xingyin acknowledge him as her disciple. As for Yang Huiying, she had already been ignored by them. They were all musicians, so it was clear to them who was real and who was fake, and who was the real composer. Without real experience, who could play a song like Gu Xingyin to this realm? Tang Zhongyi coughed, sorted out his emotions, and gently held Gu Xingyin's hand. Gu Xingyin stood up with her strength. Thank you for the piano, Tang Zhongyi said to the chief disciple of the Lemon Tree Orchestra. The chief disciple was very kind at this moment. It's okay, you're welcome. If Miss Ning Zhao needs anything else, you can continue to look for me. Chapter 231. Yang Huiying had been waiting for Lemon Tree Orchestra's reply. During this period, her tutor often took her out. Compared to before, this treatment was like heaven and hell. She was applying a mask on her bed when she suddenly received a call from her tutor. Hello. Well, I'll be right there. She hurriedly tore off her mask, tidied up, and left. The principal pianist of Lemon Tree Orchestra told me that he heard your Sunshine at another place yesterday. Also, the other party said that this song was her original work. He now doubts the authenticity of what you said earlier. Yang Huiying's expression changed. Could it be that they met Ning Zhao? She couldn't admit to this. She pretended to be angry and said, the other party must be lying about this. Sunshine is my original work. I have the manuscript here to prove it. Her tutor saw that she was firm and felt relieved. No matter what, he didn't want his student to be someone who plagiarized other people's works. I'll explain this to Lemon Tree Orchestra. Don't worry, the truth will come out. Yang Huiying forced a smile and looked a little dazed. Her tutor saw her like this and thought that she was affected by this matter. He comforted her and left. Yang Huiying returned to her residence. The more she thought about it, the more flustered she felt. No, she had to do something. She couldn't let Ning Zhao have a chance to explain. This song could only be hers. At this moment, someone posted a video on a large music forum that she frequented. Yesterday, I went to a banquet and happened to hear a song. The OP was shocked. With the mentality that it's better to share it with others than to share it alone, I'm sharing it with the netizens. Yang Huiying clicked on it and saw that it was a video of Ning Zhao playing the song. The angle of the cameraman was very good. Even the dialogue in the video was very clear. Ning Zhao's sentence, "This is a song for you," was enough for people to hear clearly. Yang Huiying was anxious and angry. She kept scrolling through the comments below. Some praised the beauty of the song, while others asked who the person playing the piano was. After flipping through for a while, someone finally pointed out that the name of the song in the video was Sunshine. As early as half a month ago, he had heard someone play it at Pine Forest Academy's graduation ceremony. The composer was obviously not the girl in the video. Yang Huiying saw this and suddenly had a plan in her heart. Half an hour later, a new post was posted on the forum. It was signed by Yang Huiying. In the post, she publicly claimed that she had seen the video on the forum. The girl in the video said that the piano piece was her original composition, but she had already played the piece on the big stage of Pine Forest Academy half a month ago. That girl was just a despicable plagiarist. She even put up photos. In the photo was the manuscript of this piano piece. This caused an uproar in the forum. Many people were condemning Gu Shengyin. The OP of the original post was also confused. He only said that he did not know this girl and that the video could have been taken during the banquet. When the netizens asked who the girl was, he refused to say anything. Tang Zhongyi received a call. Second young Master Tang, did you take a look at the Sound of Music forum? Someone said that the song Ning Zhao played for you the other day was plagiarized. Chapter 232. Tang Zhongyi flipped through the comments of the netizens page by page. Looking at Yang Huing's righteous condemnation on the top floor, the anger in his heart could not be suppressed. Despicable plagiarist? Yang Huing really dared to say that. Who was Zhao Zhao? How could she plagiarize other people's things? This song was specially written by Zhao Zhao for him. If she knew that she was used by Yang Huing with ulterior motives, he did not know how sad she would be. He decided that he would not tell Zhao Zhao about this matter. But he hid it here and forgot that there was still Tang Qian. Tang Qian did not understand the sinister world of adults. He simply felt strange. Why did Auntie Zhao Zhao write it, but Teacher Yang said that he wrote it? When Tang Zhongyi came to Gu Shengyin's room, he saw a very unhappy Zhao Zhao. She sat on the bed hugging her legs and ignored his arrival. What's wrong? He sat beside her. Gu Shengyin secretly despised himself for trying to act cute, but his eyes turned red all of a sudden. Tang Zhongyi became anxious and hurriedly asked what made her unhappy. Gu Shengyin sobbed and said, I wrote it. Tang Zhongyi spent a long time to understand what she was talking about. Because of that woman Yang Huiying, his face was so gloomy that it could drip water. Zhao Zhao, you can rest assured that no one can take away your things. He swore to Gu Shengyin. However, Gu Shengyin tugged at his sleeve and handed him something. It was wrapped in a gift box shaped like a rabbit. Originally, it was your gift. After she said that, she remembered something and more tears fell. Tang Zhongyi did not have time to open the gift. He was in a hurry to coax Gu Shengyin for a long time. Finally, he coaxed the crying Gu Shengyin to sleep. He opened the gift. It was a CD. Tang Zhongyi left the room quietly and returned to the study. He turned on the computer and put the things on the CD. The girl in the picture seemed to be a little unaccustomed to the camera. She smiled shyly. It was Ning Zhao. This is my gift to you, Tang Zhongyi. This song contains everything I want to say to you. This song exists because of you. Although Ning Zhao's speech was no longer obstructed, it was rare for him to speak so coherently, let alone in front of a camera. Tang Zhongyi was sure that Zhao Zhao had practiced for a long time even if it was such a short sentence. After that, the long-haired girl in white sat quietly in front of the piano, playing the song You over and over again. Her expression was so sincere, as if this song was her whole world. Tang Zhongyi didn't know how long he had been watching the video. The corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted into a smile. The anger brought about by Yang Huiying had unknowingly dissipated. Look, his girl's heart was also filled with him. She would carefully prepare a gift for him, try to speak to the camera for him, and make such a song for him. He opened the forum again. Yang Huiying's post had reached the top and appeared in the most popular place on the homepage. Many people supported Yang Huiying and advocated exposing this shameless plagiarist so that she could no longer stay in the music industry. Tang Zhongyi looked coldly at the top of the post, Yang Huiying. He was very reluctant to share this video with others, but... Chapter 233. While Yang Huiying's plagiarism incident was in an uproar, another video was released. The person who released the video didn't hide his identity. He stated his position at the beginning, I never thought that there would be such a vicious and shameless person in the world. She actually dared to despicably plagiarize someone else's work and then frame the creator as a plagiarist. The person who spoke was Tang Zhongyi, and the video he released happened to be the gift Gu Shengyin gave him. In the video, the girl in the white dress played You over and over again. When they saw Gu Xingyin's video, the clamoring voices on the internet suddenly disappeared. It could be seen that the person who made this video was very attentive. The feelings that the girl poured into this song could be seen even by a layman. In contrast, Yang Huiying was much worse in terms of playing and expressing the meaning of this song. It was clear at a glance who was better and who was worse. More importantly, the date was clearly written in the lower right corner of the video. As early as half a year ago, this disc was recorded by Gu Xingyin bit by bit. During this period, Tang Zhongyi also went to Gu Xingyin and asked if she had any other videos. Gu Xingyin also gave him some scattered videos that weren't put on the disc. It was worth mentioning that the manuscript of the score that Yang Huiying used as evidence appeared in Gu Xingyin's video. In the video, the girl held a pen and kept writing and drawing on a piece of snow-white paper. Occasionally, she even erased some parts that she wasn't satisfied with. Some attentive netizens took the music score in the video and compared it with Yang Huiying's original. They were surprised to find that not only the handwriting, but even the mistakes in the erasure were exactly the same. Tang Zhongyi also asked a famous computer expert to prove that the video he posted had absolutely no trace of falsification. When the netizen posted the comparison picture, it was a slap in the face. Obviously, the manuscript that Yang Huiying took out was the result of someone else's labor. She was the one who had really plagiarized. Yang Huiying soon received a call from her tutor. The tutor roared through the phone, "What's with the video on the internet? Didn't you say that this was your original work? Yang Huiying, you've really disappointed me." The tutor hung up the phone directly. Yang Huiying held the phone tightly, her heart in a mess. The academy's response came very quickly. Yang Huiying received an email from Pine Forest Academy, stating that Pine Forest Academy could not tolerate the appearance of students who plagiarized and maliciously slandered others, and that Yang Huiying's student status would be revoked. In other words, she, Yang Huiying, had been expelled from the school before she had even obtained her graduation certificate. It's over, everything is over. From now on, with such a stain on his name, he would never be able to establish himself in the music industry again. In the past, those classmates, whether they were better than him or not, would only look at him with disdain when they talked about him. Yang Huiying covered her head with her hands and buried herself deep in it, as if the things that she couldn't face had never happened. Gu Xingyin knew that the threat from Yang Huiying had been completely removed. Then, the rest. She looked at a certain man who was walking towards her with his back against the light. She smiled like a flower and took the initiative to give herself a hug. Chapter 234. Tang Zhongyi felt that he had used up all his luck to be able to meet Ning Zhao in this life. The first day he saw her, the sun was shining brightly. In the garden of the Ning family, the girl with her hair loose and sitting on the swing gently swayed his heart. After that, he took her back to the Ning family. The second young master of the Tang family learned how to take care of a person for the first time. He dried her hair, covered her with a blanket, and watched her sleep at night before he could feel at ease. If someone had told him in the past that he would do this for a woman one day, he would definitely have scoffed. But now, he looked up. Ning Zhao, who was already a mother of 2 children, was sitting quietly on the swing just like when they first met. She was holding a book and studying it carefully. The sun shone through the leaves above and scattered on the top of her head. It was as if time had never left any traces on her. She was still the same as when they first met 10 years ago. Quiet, beautiful, and no longer ethereal and unapproachable. He saw his 2-year-old daughter running towards her mother. The two of them said something, and the little girl plunged into her mother's arms. The mother and daughter laughed together. Now, he could no longer see the shadow of the Ning Zhao who had once closed herself off. She had become fond of laughing, taught the children how to play the piano, and played games with them. Dad, I want to go to Disneyland on Sunday. Mom has already agreed. The 4-year-old son looked like his mother, especially his pair of dark eyes. They were exactly the same. Okay, tomorrow, let's go together as a family. He smiled, picked up his son, and walked towards the 2 most important babies in his life. Gu Xingyin sat on a bench at the side and watched her husband and 2 children play on the merry-go-round. She couldn't play on this thing. She would feel dizzy the moment she sat on it, so she simply sat and watched the three of them play happily. "Excuse me, are you Ning Zhao?" A hesitant female voice sounded. Gu Shengyin heard this and looked over. The woman who spoke was wearing a cleaner's uniform. She wasn't bad-looking, but her face had been carved with tired wrinkles under the ravages of time and life. He looked strangely familiar. Gu Shengyin pondered for a while and finally remembered who she was. Yang Huiying? Seeing Ning Zhao remember her, the woman breathed a sigh of relief. She smiled and said, "It's me. I didn't expect you to remember me." Gu Shengyin did not expect to see this woman again. After her mission was completed, the system would not be bound to her at all times after she was no longer threatened by the mission target. Instead, it would often enter a dormant state, so it did not prompt her earlier. Seeing Gu Shengyin's lukewarm reaction, Yang Huiying didn't care. Years of running around for a living had completely worn away her former sharpness. "I thought your back looked familiar. I didn't expect it to really be you." She looked at Ning Zhao and said sincerely, "I owe you an apology for what happened back then." Gu Shengyin did not expect that this woman would actually want to talk to her about this. She froze for a moment and then said, "Those things, let bygones be bygones." Knowing that the other party didn't want to talk to her, Yang Huiying smiled and walked away. From afar, she looked back and saw the man she used to like when she was young. He walked to Ning Zhao's side and the two of them leaned against each other intimately. She shook her head and smiled. Chapter 235. Gu Shengyin opened her eyes as she felt a warm sensation. Body of light. She was born with the body of light. She heard an excited voice in front of her. At the same time, she realized that the light came from her body. When the light dissipated, Gu Shengyin was respectfully led to the side by a few people in white robes. She realized that there were many girls here, and without exception, they were all looking at her with jealousy. Gu Shengyin already had the ability to keep a straight face in front of others. She sat down elegantly and looked forward, but in reality she was reading the plot of this world. This was a world of magic. Like many other worlds, the two major factions in this world were light and dark. The light side always had the upper hand and firmly held the faith of all the people on the Audi continent. This was because the most powerful god in this world was the omnipotent god of light. The original owner, Hathaway Louise, was originally a royal princess of the Audi Empire. She was chosen by the Holy Church, the largest power in the Audi continent. Because she was born with the body of light, she successfully became the new saintess of the Holy Church. The saintess of the Holy Church was the spokesperson of the Holy Church. She had to have the purest faith of light. Her body and mind had to be loyal to the God of light. Hathaway was worthy of the title of Saintess of the Light. She spent almost all of her free time praying to God. In her eyes, God was omnipotent. God was her only faith. Even if God asked her to die immediately, she would do it without hesitation. The power of the believers of light came from the God of light. The stronger the faith, the stronger the power of light. Hathaway became one of the most powerful people on the Audi continent in a short period of time. She was supposed to be honorable and dazzling, but because of the jealousy of her maids, they schemed against her, causing Hathaway to be tainted by the power of darkness. She was no longer pure and flawless, and her glory as the saintess was taken away. Hathaway couldn't accept that she couldn't serve God anymore, so she chose to end her life. Heidi was the maid who framed Hathaway. She was originally a candidate for the Saintess of the Light, just like Hathaway. But in the end, the Holy See chose Hathaway. Among the remaining candidates, the two with the best qualifications became the Saintess' personal maids. Heidi was unwilling. In her eyes, she wasn't any worse than Hathaway. But in the end, Hathaway became a saintess who was on equal footing with the Pope, while she was just a lowly maid. If Hathaway wasn't around, wouldn't he have a chance? Gu Shengyin knew that the ending of this world was that after Hathaway died, Heidi did not succeed in ascending to the throne. Her heart had already been occupied by jealousy and had become extremely filthy. She couldn't even maintain her faith in light, so how could she become a saintess who wholeheartedly served the God of light? After receiving the plot, she couldn't help but want to facepalm. This body would become the saint of light in the future, which meant that her body and mind would belong to the God of light. She would have to remain pure and unblemished for the rest of her life. Chastity was also a prerequisite for a saint. Once the saintess lost her chastity, her body would no longer be pure, and her faith in light would be tainted. She would be discovered immediately. Gu Xingyin lit a candle for her lover in this world. Chapter 236. System, as the saintess of the light, I must have pure faith. I can't do that. What if I'm found out? Gu Xingyin frowned as she thought of this. The system said confidently, Don't worry, I'll do it. Gu Xingyin felt as if the system had injected energy into the depths of her mind. After that, she realized that something was wrong with her. For example, she was currently sitting in the Holy Church of the Light. At the highest point of the Holy Church was the statue of the God of Light. When Gu Xingyin saw the statue, she had the urge to rush over and worship it. Gu Xingyin stopped herself with difficulty. She asked the system quietly, What did you do to me? The system said, It's a product of the system. It can gather the host's faith in a short period of time. Don't worry, the host will still maintain her original thoughts. You don't have to worry about being brainwashed. Gu Xingyin thought. All right, in her eyes, the system is still very reliable. The primary selection of the light curia ended quickly. Gu Xingyin and the other 9 saintess candidates were brought to the largest church in the Audi continent, the Holy Church of Light. This was also the headquarters of the light curia in the Audi continent. It was said that a god had once descended here. It was said that the God of Light liked beautiful and exquisite objects. The entire Holy Church of Light shone brightly and was extremely beautiful. A few girls could not help but look around. One of them even let out a gasp of surprise. As a high-class saintess candidate, Gu Xingyin naturally did not look sideways the entire time. She perfectly demonstrated what it meant to be noble. The bishop who was leading them saw the reactions of the group and nodded to himself. As for the few people who exclaimed earlier, they were already on the list of candidates in his mind. Seeing such a small thing and making such a big fuss. As the saintess of the light curia, she would have to face many big situations in the future. In the future, she would represent the entire curia. If this happened elsewhere, the light curia would lose all its face. They were brought to the Holy Church's Holy Church. Gu Xingyin looked up and saw the high and mighty God of Light in front of her. The incomparably gorgeous man held a scepter in his hand and sat upright on a luxurious throne. His face was shrouded in a layer of divine light, and no one could see his face. Even so, this man had a kind of charm that made everyone unable to help but admire him. This was especially true for Gu Xingyin, who was currently being condensed with faith. She only felt that she was completely out of control as she walked straight towards the divine throne. Then he knelt on the ground in a pious manner. "O great Lord, I am your most loyal and devout believer. Please allow me to pray to you." She began to chant in a low voice. Everyone else was shocked. Even the bishop was confused by this development. He looked at the white-clothed woman kneeling before the divine throne and thought to himself, could it be that she did it on purpose? Did he purposely make such a gesture for the people of the Holy See? Thinking of this, the bishop felt that it was a pity. Originally, because she was born with the body of light, the scepter of the Saintess of Light would have fallen into her hands. However, he couldn't wait to prove himself as the god of the great cathedral of light. He wasn't just a decoration. In the high and mighty heavenly realm, countless rare flowers bloomed. The angels displayed their beautiful singing and moving dancing. All of this was for the man who was leaning on the throne with his eyes closed. Chapter 237. He had a face that even the most legendary sculptor in the entire Audi continent couldn't create. He just sat there quietly with his eyes closed, but no one could ignore his existence. The angels looked at him with undisguised longing and adoration. He seemed to feel something. His eyelids trembled slightly and he opened his eyes. That pair of golden eyes was more dazzling than any light in the world. He felt a pure power of faith. It had been a long time since a believer gave him such a comfortable feeling. The God of Light curiously looked at the source of this faith. He saw a human girl with her head lowered in a devout manner as she prayed to his statue. The endless power of faith was coming from her body. The god of light suddenly had a strong feeling. He felt that he should know her. He wanted to see what this girl looked like. The will of the god of light was just a thought. Gu Shengyin quickly raised her head. The god of light stared at her face. Her golden hair was carefully tied together and hung behind her head. On her forehead was a thin silver chain with a sparkling blue crystal. What was even clearer than the crystals were her eyes, which were as blue as the sky. It was as if everything in the world could be seen in her eyes. This girl had a beauty that even the heavenly realm angels couldn't reach. The god of light frowned. He always felt that she shouldn't look like this. But if she didn't look like this, what should she look like? Long black hair? A thought appeared in his mind. Wait, isn't that the color of darkness? The god of light laughed. No one could hide anything in front of the god. This girl was born with the body of light. She couldn't be related to the demons. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the girl had finished praying and was about to get up. At that moment, Gu Shengyin really wanted to cover her face. She actually started praying in front of so many people without any scruples. At that moment, those people from the light curia must have thought that she was an opportunist. She sighed. No matter what, she still had to fight for the position of saintess. Just as she was about to turn and leave, something strange happened. A bright light rose from the scepter in the hands of the statue and shot towards Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin's entire body was bathed in the rich power of light. This feeling was too comfortable, and she couldn't help but sigh. Looking at her satisfied expression, the god of light chuckled. His eyes were filled with love that even he didn't know about. The angels in heavenly realm looked at each other. They did not know what had happened to make God so happy. Everyone in the great sage hall was stunned by this scene. Other than the bishops and saintess candidates who were originally with Gu Shengyin, there were also the pope and cardinals who had rushed over after sensing the abnormalities in the great cathedral. As soon as they entered, they saw Gu Shengyin, who was being baptized by divine light below the divine throne. God! The pope immediately knelt down. The rest of the people also came back to their senses and knelt on the ground. The god of light ignored them. He sensed for a moment, and after confirming that his believer could not withstand any more power of light, he retracted the divine light. Gu Shengyin opened her eyes in confusion. Chapter 238. She had no idea what had just happened. System? She asked hesitantly. The system said, the host has received the love of the most powerful being in this world, the god of light. Gu Shengyin thought to herself, it's really an unintentional thing. Now that the statue had returned to its original state, the pope and the others stood up one by one. Gu Shengyin felt that the kind and holy pope was looking at her as if he was looking at a rare treasure. She subconsciously walked towards him, and suddenly realized that her body seemed to have changed. The pope seemed to know her doubts, and raised his hand to condense a light mirror with light magic, allowing Gu Shengyin to see herself in the mirror. Her facial features did not change, but on the fair forehead of the person in the mirror, there was a golden divine pattern that appeared out of nowhere. The pattern was complicated and beautiful, and it was shining. It made Hathaway's originally delicate face look even more beautiful and holy. This was the glory that God had bestowed upon his most beloved people. The Pope had already recovered, and he looked at Gu Shengyin with a smile. Child, are you Hathaway? Gu Shengyin bowed to him and nodded. The Pope, who had been observing Gu Shengyin all this time, felt very unhappy when he saw her gesture. Who in this world was worthy of her bow? The Pope seemed to have sensed something, and his feet moved slightly, and he dodged Gu Shengyin's bow. Looking at the surprised looks of the bishops behind him, the Pope did not explain. His attainment in light magic was close to that of a demigod, so he could naturally sense some things. When Gu Shengyin bowed to him, his intuition told him that if he accepted her bow, there would be terrible consequences. The status of the Holy See's saintess is comparable to this old man. Hathaway, you don't have to bow to me. The Pope said kindly to Gu Shengyin. This sentence directly acknowledged Gu Shengyin's status as the Holy Maiden. The cardinals behind him were not surprised at all. They all saw clearly that the god of light had personally blessed the saintess, which meant that the saintess was a candidate that the god of light approved and was even satisfied with. At this time, their opinions were no longer important. However, the other candidates did not think so. But wasn't there another test later? We haven't even tried. Why should we be eliminated? A girl standing beside Heidi was not convinced. Heidi lowered her eyes and sneered in her heart. This idiot. Although she thought the same in her heart, she also knew that saying such words at a time like this was absolutely brainless behavior. As expected, the Pope's expression turned cold. He was polite to Gu Shengyin because she was the saintess who was favored by the god of light. How dare this girl question the Holy See's decision? This is the will of the god of light. If you have any questions, you can ask God. The girl was at a loss for words. Raise an objection to God? Just now, everyone saw that God was clearly very satisfied with Hathaway, and that was why he had personally blessed her. If she went to pray, God would not even give her a look. The matter of Gu Shengyin becoming the saintess of the Holy See was thus settled. Just like in the original plot, Heidi and another girl named Vivian became the saintess' personal maid. Chapter 239. The Pope held the scepter that symbolized the status and glory of the saintess and handed it over to Gu Shengyin. Everyone remained silent as they stared at this historic scene. The masters of oil painting and sculpting firmly engraved this scene in their minds. This kind of occasion was bound to be recorded in the annals of history and passed down to the world. However, a scene that no one had expected occurred. Gu Shengyin's hand hadn't even touched the scepter when that scepter made of the strongest and most precious material in the entire Audi continent shattered inch by inch. It fell to the ground and was burned to ashes by the golden godfire. Gu Shengyin, the Pope, there was only one person who could do this. Everyone looked at the high and mighty statue of the light god. Many people had already knelt down. The Pope looked at Gu Shengyin in confusion. Wasn't Hathaway the saintess who was favored by God? But if God really favored her, why did he destroy the scepter? After all, a saintess without a scepter wouldn't be recognized by the masses. Some nobles were already whispering that this saintess's faith wasn't pure and caused God's dissatisfaction. That was why she destroyed the saintess' scepter in anger. Some people were already shouting that they should severely punish Gu Shengyin, the saintess who caused God's dissatisfaction. This suggestion was actually approved by many people. Gu Shengyin glanced over and saw that the speaker was someone from the Aquamarine Empire. The Aquamarine Empire was a new empire and was famous for its belligerence. It had always been at odds with the oldest empire on the continent, the Audi Empire. Hathaway was the niece of the Audi Empire's emperor, so the people of the Aquamarine Empire naturally didn't want her to become the saintess. Unlike the people from the Aquamarine Empire who were gloating, the people from the Audi Empire were looking at Gu Shengyin with worry. Heidi lowered her head slightly, her eyes filled with schadenfreude. She couldn't wait for Gu Shengyin, the holy maiden, to be deposed. That way she would have a better chance, wouldn't it? The Pope did not believe that this was because the gods were dissatisfied with the saintess. After all, the robe that Gu Shengyin was wearing was a gift from the god of light. Gu Shengyin ignored everything around her. She just stood there quietly as if she was waiting for a result. Sure enough, when the people of the Aquamarine Empire began to clamor, the high and mighty god finally responded. A golden light rose from the statue, and an illusory figure walked out from the statue. Many people felt a stinging pain in their eyes and had no choice but to lower their heads. Soon after, they realized who that person was. God's descent. The entire great cathedral fell to their knees. Even the Pope did the same. Only Gu Shengyin remained standing. It wasn't that she didn't want to kneel, but that she couldn't. The moment she saw the figure, her first reaction was the same as everyone else's. However, an inexplicable force held her back. The figure walked step by step through the void until it reached Gu Shengyin's side. "The scepter of mortals is not worthy of your glory, my most devout believer." The god's low voice resounded in the great cathedral, resounding in everyone's hearts. Gu Shengyin looked at the figure in front of her in shock. It was just an illusory figure, but it seemed to have the power to destroy heaven and earth. No one doubted the true identity of the person in front of them. The God of Light. Chapter 240. The God of Light smiled as he looked at his follower's stunned face. Oh, he looks even better this way. He slowly raised his right hand, and a golden light gradually condensed in his hand. When the light dissipated, the item in his hand appeared in front of Gu Xingyin's eyes. It was a silver scepter. This is the glory I bestow upon you. The God of Light handed the scepter to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses in a daze. She stretched out her hands and carefully received the scepter. The God of Light seemed to chuckle, and he slowly bent down. Gu Xingyin only felt a slight chill on her forehead. When she looked up, the God of Light's figure had already disappeared. My follower, be well and pass on my glory. Only these words were left, and they seemed to linger in her ears. Only when the God of Light's aura completely disappeared from the great cathedral did everyone dare to raise their heads. They looked at the Saint of Light standing alone on the high platform, and the noble scepter in her hand. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable respect and envy. The God of Light's glory and favor had reached this level. Who would dare to say anything about the status of the Saint of Light? The people of the Aquamarine Empire were extremely regretful of their previous words. The Pope was pleasantly surprised. A saint who was deeply loved by the gods had appeared in the Holy Church. This was clearly a good thing for the Holy Church, wasn't it? He couldn't suppress his joy as he announced, I declare that from today onwards, Hathaway Louise will be the most glorious and holy Saint of Light of the Holy Church. She will become the emissary of the God of Light, and bring the glory of the God of Light to every corner of the Audi continent. No one had the slightest objection. Heidi lowered her head. She was extremely jealous. But why would the God of Light favor Hathaway so much? She was clearly a devout believer of the God of Light, wasn't she? When Gu Xingyin returned to her bedroom, she was still in a daze. System, tell me, why does the God of Light treat me so differently? She couldn't figure it out. The system said, this world is considered a high-level plane among the 3,000 worlds, and the God of Light is a powerful level 1 God. The most I can do is ensure that my existence is not discovered by him, but I can't find out what he's thinking. Gu Xingyin was a little excited. That's a God. I have never seen a God before. Unfortunately, I can't see his face. System. I hope this sentence won't be known by a certain existence. Gu Xingyin took out the scepter given to her by the God of Light. The entire scepter was silver-white in color, and its craftsmanship was exquisite. There was a huge blue crystal embedded at the top of the scepter. Even though it was placed there quietly, Gu Xingyin could feel the powerful light energy contained within it. According to Hathaway's memories, there wasn't any energy stone in Audi that could contain such a terrifying amount of energy. This was probably something from the realm of gods. Gu Xingyin glanced at the scepter, then looked at the beautiful robe she was wearing. She then thought of the noble and magnificent statue in the great Cathedral of Light. She silently complained to the system, people say that the God of Light likes luxurious things, and now I really believe it. As far as the eye could see, there wasn't a single thing related to the gods that was low-key. Gu Xingyin, who also liked luxurious things deep down, smiled with sparkling eyes. I can ride on such a coattail. Chapter 241. In just a few days, the news that the new Saint of Light, Hathaway, was deeply loved by the God of Light had spread throughout the entire Audi continent. Hathaway, the Emperor of the Deep Blue Empire, recently sent a secret letter asking for help. He said that their northern territory has been invaded by the demon race. It just so happens that you will be representing the Holy Church to visit the entire Audi continent. Why don't you go to the Deep Blue Empire first? Demon race? The demon race had been exiled by the god to the land of calamity opposite the Audi continent 10,000 years ago. They were separated by the abyss of death. How could they cross the abyss to reach the Audi continent? Gu Xingyin had no reason to refuse. 2 days later, she prepared to leave. When the Saint of Light went out, her entourage was naturally luxurious. Not only did the Holy Church send over 100 priests to follow her, but they also sent an entire Knights of Light to protect the Saint of Light. Accompanying the Saint of Light were 2 cardinals and several bishops. Even the Pope's entourage couldn't compare. Heidi walked in and whispered to Gushing, "Lady Saint, the commander of the Knights of Light, Sir Carlos, wishes to see you." Gu Shengyin noticed that her face was a bit red. "Let him in," Gu Shengyin said. When Carlos came in, Gu Shengyin knew why Heidi's face was so red. This commander of the Knights of Light was not only young, but also a rare handsome man. He had a head full of bright golden hair and deep blue eyes that were more mysterious than the sea. When he smiled, it was as if the entire hall was infected by him and became brighter. The Holy Church had 3 major knight regiments: the Knights of Light, the Holy Knights, and the Honorable Knights. Any one of the 3 knight regiments was at least a legend swordmaster. And to be the commander of the 3 knight regiments, one had to be at least a sword saint. Sword saints were already at the peak of the Audi continent's power. It was no wonder that Heidi was moved by such a handsome and powerful knight. "Good day, Saintess." Carlos entered and saluted Gu Shengyin with a knight's salute. "Good day, Sir Carlos." Gu Shengyin nodded at him. "The Knights of Light are ready." Gu Shengyin nodded. "I'm ready." The fact that the Holy Maiden of the Radiant Church was traveling in such a grand fashion was naturally known throughout the continent. Everywhere they went, there would be countless people begging to see the Saintess. However, Carlos blocked most of them. "Saintess, please don't blame me for acting on my own." Carlos came to Gu Shengyin to ask for forgiveness after the convoy stopped to rest. "Your Excellency, Carlos has done well. Among these people, there are only a few who have firm beliefs." Hearing this, Carlos smiled in his heart. This Saintess was indeed as strong as the legends said. Her faith in the God of Light was extremely firm. There was almost no delay along the way as they arrived at the Deep Blue Empire. The Deep Blue Empire received the news a few days ago. His Majesty the Emperor brought all the royal family members to the city gate to welcome Gu Shengyin's arrival. God of Light. With Lady Saintess and everyone here, the crisis of my Deep Blue Empire will definitely be resolved. The Emperor of the Deep Blue Empire said emotionally. Host, when this person spoke, he didn't have any emotional fluctuations. The system reminded. Gu Shengyin glanced at the Emperor. Then he was acting. She didn't know what the Emperor had prepared for them to come to the Deep Blue Empire. He was waiting for her. Lady Saintess, the Deep Blue Empire is holding a welcome banquet for you. Heidi walked in. Her hostility towards Gu Shengyin had decreased by a lot. The reason was simple. Saintesses couldn't marry and couldn't like anyone. As the Saintess maid, she didn't have this restriction. Looking at Carlos, she was glad that she wasn't chosen at that time. Chapter 242. The main character of the banquet was undoubtedly Gu Shengyin. Apart from her, the other cardinals were also the focus of attention. On the other hand, the attention of the noble ladies was completely focused on the handsome knights. Especially Carlos, who was handsome, charming, elegant, and powerful. Naturally, he was the most popular existence. Unfortunately, to the disappointment of all the ladies, Sir Carlos turned a blind eye to all the ambiguous expressions of goodwill. The focus of the entire banquet was always on Gu Shengyin. If not for the fact that the Saint of Light was destined to be unable to marry, these noble ladies would have thought that there was an unspeakable relationship between the two. Your Excellency, Saintess, these places are the important areas of the Deep Blue Empire that have been invaded by the demon race. After the banquet, the Emperor of the Deep Blue Empire began to talk business with Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin took a look. Sure enough, it was the 2 northernmost cities of the Deep Blue Empire. The information provided by the Emperor was not false. The situation was exactly the same as what the Holy See had secretly investigated. I will set off for the Icefield city tomorrow. These demons who have betrayed the Light God will receive the most severe punishment. Gu Shengyin's voice revealed a murderous intent. Then, thank you, Your Excellency, Saintess. The Emperor of the Deep Blue Empire had a grateful expression. On the way back, Gu Shengyin secretly thought, the Emperor of the Deep Blue Empire's purpose could not be so simple. However, since she had been baptized by divine power, her magic power had reached the level of a warlock saint. Moreover, she had a powerhouse like Carlos and 2 cardinals by her side. Even if she encountered a dangerous situation, there would be no problem for her to escape unscathed. Then, since that was the case, why not go to the Icefield City as he wished? What's more, this trip, whether she was willing or not, she had to go. The convoy only stayed in the imperial capital of the Deep Blue Empire for a day before setting off for the Icefield City. The Emperor of the Deep Blue Empire smiled as he watched the convoy leave. His eyes were filled with emotions that no one could understand. Carlos seemed to have felt something and looked back from afar. He did not say anything and continued to be his most loyal knight, guarding the Saintess. Icefield City. When Gu Xingyin got out of the car, even though she was mentally prepared, she was still shocked by the scene in front of her. The entire city was shrouded in a black mist. Gu Xingyin, who was born with the radiant body, was especially sensitive to the power of darkness. Almost instantly, she sensed the dense aura of the demon clan. The city was in a state of desolation. There was no one on either side of the road, and the doors of every house were tightly shut. There was no trace of life. Someone seemed to have seen them from afar and walked over to greet them. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man with a thin face. He was wearing a robe that was neither new nor old. When he saw Guxin, he was overjoyed. The city lord of Icefield City, Kerman, welcomes the Saintess. Gu Xingyin looked behind him. There were only a few people. She raised her eyebrows but did not say anything. Instead, she asked another question. How's the situation in your Icefield City? City Lord Kerman smiled bitterly. The demon clan attacks almost every 3 to 5 days. Almost 90% of the soldiers in our Icefield City have died in battle. Now there are only some old, weak, sick, and disabled left in the city. Moreover, due to the invasion of the demon Qi, the people in the city often fall ill and their physiques are weak. Now, the Icefield City is almost waiting for death. Chapter 243. Before Komen could finish his words, an ear-piercing alarm sounded. His complexion changed as he exclaimed, "Oh no, there's another demon invasion." Gu Xingyin's expression turned solemn. The moment before Carlos gave the order, she raised the scepter in her hand high. A dazzling white light rose from the tip of her scepter and gradually spread throughout the entire Icefield City. The Great Purification Spell. The eyes of the 2 red-robed bishops lit up as they looked at Gu Xingyin in shock. The Great Purification Spell was one of the most powerful forbidden spells of light magic. Only saints could cast it. The 2 red-robed bishops could also cast this spell, but they could not cover the entire Icefield City like Gu Xingyin. Didn't this mean that the Holy Maiden, at such a young age, had already surpassed the 2 of them who had been immersed in light magic for hundreds of years? The 2 of them looked at each other, their expressions filled with shock and surprise. In any case, as the Holy Maiden of the Holy See, Gu Xingyin's strength was a good thing for the Holy See. Screams rang out one after another. Gu Xingyin knew that this was the final struggle of the demons. Great Purification was the most tyrannical forbidden spell of all light magic. Great Purification, as the name implied, was that all dark, impure, and things rejected by light would be dissolved in the light of the Great Purification spell. Komen looked at the black fog that had covered the entire Icefield City for several months, disappearing in the white light. The sky of the Icefield City finally returned to its previous clear state. He almost burst into tears. "Thank you, Holy Maiden." He bowed deeply to Gu Xingyin. The followers behind him also followed suit and bowed to Gu Xingyin. "You're welcome. It's my duty to kill the demons and destroy the darkness," Gu Xingyin said with a smile. At this time, Carlos suddenly spoke. "I wonder if Mayor Komen has prepared a place for us to rest." "Holy Maiden, you've traveled a long way. It's better for you to rest." Mayor Komen nodded repeatedly. "It's already prepared. It's my fault." He quickly led Gu Xingyin and the others to the prepared accommodation. Carlos stood beside Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin looked at him gratefully. After the people of Komen left, Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. She sat down and smiled at Carlos. "Thank you." Carlos looked serious. "Holy Maiden, there's no need to show off. It's just a few low-level demons. The Knights of Light can deal with them. Gu Xingyin shook his head. You should be able to tell that the people of Komen City are all frightened. If I can't convince them with my strength, I'm afraid it will be difficult to win their trust. Carlos said stiffly, even so, you shouldn't risk your body. I was ordered to protect you, so I have the responsibility to ensure your safety. Gu Xingyin looked tired. I'm just a little exhausted. Alright, Carlos, you can leave first. Let me rest for a while. Carlos seemed to want to say something, but when he saw Gu Xingyin's pale face, he swallowed his words and went out quietly. The system said, that human cares a lot about you. Your attitude is so cold. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes. It's because he cares too much about me that I have to do this? Since there was no result, she would kill him before he sprouted. Chapter 244. Sir Carlos, this is the Qianlin fruit I just got. Would you like to try it? Heidi saw Carlos standing alone at the door and asked with a blushing face. Carlos shook his head and said, I don't need to thank you. The Saintess used a lot of magic power earlier. Go and see if she needs it. Heidi's face turned pale and she whispered yes. Her hands clenched tightly around the tray. She had been glad that she was not the Saintess, so she had the opportunity to get in touch with the person she liked. But what about Carlos? His gaze had always been on Saintess Hathaway, and he had never looked at anyone else. If she was the Saintess at that time, would Carlos only have her in his heart and in his eyes, just like now? Gu Xingyin inexplicably received a system prompt that Heidi's dislike of her had increased. She was a little irritated. When the matter in Icefield City is settled, I will get rid of Heidi. At the moment, she was meditating to restore the magic power in her body. With her current level, it was actually very stressful for her to cast such a large-scale great purification. She had just used a trick. The scepter given to her by the God of Light was not only beautiful, but also rich in the power of light. It could be used as a cheating device at a critical moment. However, even with the enhancement of the scepter, the mana in her body was almost depleted by the terrifying output of the great purification spell. Carlos had also noticed this, which was why he had asked the Castellan to bring them here for a rest. Gu Xingyin, who closed her eyes, did not notice that when she was meditating, the scepter on the side flashed with a faint golden light. The power of light flowed from the scepter into her body, replenishing her magic power. So when Gu Xingyin opened her eyes and found that her body had recovered to its peak state, she was shocked. The system faintly added, the scepter given to you by the God of Light? Gu Xingyin, so that's how it is. It is worthy of being a product of the gods. It is simply a must-have. At night, when Gu Xingyin appeared in the city lord's mansion, as expected, it was already filled with people. Those who had closed their doors during the day had now tidied themselves up and came to pay a visit to the Saintess who had single-handedly dispelled the haze that had shrouded the Icefield City for months. The moment they saw Gu Xingyin come out, many of them knelt down spontaneously. Lord Komen explained awkwardly, Saintess, it's not that they don't want to come out during the day. It's just that our people are really scared. Gu Xingyin interrupted him. I know. City Lord Kerman, please don't mind, I understand. She looked around the big square of the City Lord's mansion, and her voice, which contained the power of light, faintly resounded over the Icefield City. The God of Light will not give up on any of his people. I came here under the will of the God to destroy the invading demons. Where the light shines, the haze should not exist. Her voice was full of the power of faith. The people of the Icefield City seemed to be infected by her words and shouted together with her. Where the light shines, the haze should not exist. Where the light shines, the haze should not exist. Carlos looked at the woman standing in front of the crowd with a determined expression, and a thought that he had never had before welled up in his mind. Chapter 245. Milady Holy Maiden, we didn't discover anything out of the ordinary, Carlos said to Gu Xingyin. Hearing this, Gu Xingyin frowned. This shouldn't be the case. At this time, she was investigating the outskirts of Icefield City with Carlos and a small team of Knights of Light. Because the matter was rather secretive, Gu Xingyin didn't bring many people with her. But the result of the investigation was abnormal. In the entire outskirts of Icefield City, they couldn't find a single trace of the demons. Because Gu Xingyin had used the Great Purification Technique, the aura of the demons had been completely removed. The current situation meant that after that, no more demons had come to Icefield City. Gu Xingyin wasn't so naive as to believe that the only demons harassing the Deep Blue Empire were the ones she had destroyed. She was certain that the demons had some way to conceal their tracks. Perhaps, they just wanted to temporarily avoid the limelight of the Holy Church. This time, the investigation came to an end without any results. The group returned to Icefield City. Carlos, Gu Xingyin said to Carlos. 2 days later, because the demons had been wiped out, the Radiant Church's army left Icefield City, heading to another city that had been harassed by the demons, Icefield City. But contrary to everyone's expectations, on the 3rd day after the Radiant Church's army left, Icefield City was once again attacked by the demons. The power of darkness once again enveloped the entire city. Follow them. In the darkness, 2 pairs of eyes coldly stared at the black-haired demons. These 2 people were Gu Xingyin and Carlos. The Radiant Church's departure from Icefield City was just a pretense. In fact, Gu Xingyin had long expected that the demons wouldn't give up just like that. So, she simply beat them at their own game and pretended to leave this place. She and Carlos were secretly guarding this place, waiting for the demons to arrive. Gu Xingyin watched as the demons arrived at a deserted house in the northeast corner of Icefield City. The few demons vigilantly glanced around, then began to chant an obscure incantation. Gradually, following their voices, a dark red light lit up in the empty space between them, gradually forming a door of light the size of an adult. Without hesitation, the few devils stepped into the light gate and disappeared from the room. Gu Xingyin and Carlos looked at each other. This was clearly a special teleportation formation. Seeing that the dark red wooden door was about to disappear, Gu Xingyin stepped in without hesitation. Carlos watched the slender figure disappear and followed her in. Gu Xingyin was startled by the system's voice. Destroy the demon's conspiracy and stop Diablo from reviving. There's such a setting for random missions? The system explained seriously, under normal circumstances, random quests will not appear. Don't worry, although this mission seems difficult, the system has checked the data and found that the completion rate of the mission is 100%. The difficulty of the mission is low. Gu Xingyin was speechless. If the system had not always been reliable, she would have suspected that it was lying to her. Stop Diablo from reviving. Such a difficult and dangerous mission was actually low in difficulty and had a 100% completion rate? Could it be that Diablo was already dead and had no chance of being resurrected? Gu Xingyin complained as she found that she had been teleported to a strange place. Chapter 246. The air here was damp and gloomy. The sky here was always overcast, and no light could be seen. The feeling this place gave off was cold, gloomy, and hopeless. The power of darkness that assaulted them made Gu Xingyin feel as if she couldn't breathe. She was born with the body of light, so she had a natural aversion to this place. The Land of Doom? Gu Xingyin quickly understood what this place was based on the memories in his mind. This was exactly the same as the Land of Calamity that God had used to banish the demons. Carlos, who had followed closely behind, had an unsightly expression. Clearly, he had also realized what this place was. The 2 of them realized the severity of the situation. The demons actually already had a teleportation formation to leave the Land of Calamity. Didn't this mean that the shackles of the endless abyss no longer existed for the demons? As long as the demons were willing, they could come to the Audi continent at any time. In other words, the citizens of the Audi continent were in danger of being attacked by the demons at any time. 2 honored guests, welcome to the Land of Calamity. A feminine voice sounded in this land. Gu Xingyin raised her head. A demon with long dark purple hair appeared in front of the 2 of them. A high-ranked demon. Gu Xingyin looked at this handsome demon with 2 horns on his head. The demon race was divided into ranks. The higher the rank of the demon race, the more handsome they would be. Moreover, the distinctive feature of a high-level demon race was that they would grow a pair of demon horns on their heads, which meant that their bloodline and strength were very powerful. The Holy Maiden of the Light Church, commander of the Knights of Light. The high-grade fiend smiled faintly. The innate charm of the demon race filled his face with a unique androgynous charm. Gu Xingyin's heart trembled. He had discovered their existence so quickly and even called out their names so clearly. It was very likely that they had been discovered as soon as they arrived. Her expression turned cold. The demons have been banished to the land of calamity and will never be able to enter the Audi continent. This is God's will. Are you demons trying to go against God's will? God? The demon sneered. In the eyes of the God of Light, there are only his believers. He only detests us demons. He is not a god of our demon race. He looked at Gu Xingyin and Carlos with bloodthirsty eyes. Just nice. A holy maiden of the luminous church and a commander of the Knights of Light. I'll capture you and use you as sacrifices for my God to return to the human world. As his voice fell, countless demons rushed out from the darkness and attacked the two of them. Carlos unsheathed his sword immediately. Saints, stand behind me. Gu Xingyin raised her scepter. I am not a woman who can only hide behind others in times of danger. Carlos was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, All right, Carlos is fortunate to be able to fight alongside the Holy Maiden. The power of light that was incompatible with the land of calamity surged out, burning and corroding those low-level demons, and turning them into ashes in the worst case. It looked like the two of them were crushing the demons, but in reality, Gu Xingyin knew that the situation was not good. There was an endless stream of demons in the land of calamity, but she and Carlos had no way of absorbing the power of light to replenish themselves. If this continued, the two of them would die sooner or later. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but complain. System, didn't you say that the difficulty of the mission was very easy and that the completion rate was 100%? Chapter 247. The system said, the difficulty of this mission is indeed simple. Gu Xingyin's body flickered, and a holy light technique flew over, burning a demon that attacked from behind into ashes. The system was speechless. It silently took back its words and hid in a corner, pretending to be dead. Gu Xingyin thought, after knowing you for so long, you're actually this kind of system. The land of Cataclysm was the main camp of the demons, and the two could only feel more and more demons swarming over. This could not go on. The two looked at each other and retreated as they fought. Unfortunately, the land of Cataclysm was an oracle from the God of Light, and was used to banish the demons, using the endless abyss to separate it from the Audi continent. They did not know what method the demons used to cross the endless abyss to teleport to the Audi continent, but Gu Xingyin and Carlos could not return to the Audi continent at this time. 2 days later, Gu Xingyin was close to exhaustion. Carlos's expression was still calm, and there was no sign of exhaustion, but Gu Xingyin knew that his situation was not much better than hers. In front of them was an endless demon army, and behind them was a bottomless endless abyss, like a man-eating monster. The high-level demon looked at the two of them with a smile, as if he was looking at two rabbits that had fallen into his net. Gu Xingyin knew that the demon was toying with them. From beginning to end, not a single high-level demon made a move, and the low-level demons used their lives to force the two of them into a desperate situation. Gu Xingyin did not know how many demons had died at her hands in these 2 days. The two of you, since things have come to this, follow me obediently. Speaking of which, you are lucky to be able to witness the resurrection of our great God with your own eyes. The demon was not at all worried that the two of them would resist. There was no light energy in the land of Cataclysm, and the two of them had no way to replenish their energy. Resurrect the God of Destruction? Gu Xingyin laughed coldly. The God of Light is omnipotent, and your goal will never be realized. Carlos looked at Gu Xingyin with a complicated expression, as if he did not expect her to still have such firm faith in the God of Light at this time. Omnipotent? The demon sneered. If your God is truly omnipotent, then why are you in such a predicament now? Gu Xingyin seemed to be disdainful of him. Don't try to shake my faith with these useless words. She glanced at Carlos and suddenly said, My scepter still has some power of light left. I will try to use it to tear the space here later. Take this opportunity to leave. If you can return to the Audi continent, you must tell the Holy See about the demon's scheme. Then let's leave everything to fate. Carlos's expression changed. What about you? Gu Shengyin smiled but did not speak. The scepter in her hand blazed with light, and the rich light energy made the approaching demons retreat. Is this divine power? The high-grade devilish being's expression changed. The incomparably powerful light divine power brazenly tore a crack in the space of the land of doom. Let's go, Gu Shengyin urged. Carlos did not move, and only looked at her deeply. If I leave, what will you do? Gu Shengyin, in my current state, I definitely won't be able to withstand the spatial crack. Don't worry, I have the ability to protect myself. Carlos did not believe her words at all. The two of them had been forced to this point. If she really had the ability to protect herself, would she have waited until now to reveal it? Chapter 248. Actually, Gu Shengyin wasn't lying to him. She had the system and the main character's luck, so it wasn't easy for her to die. However, Carlos didn't know this at all. He only thought that Gu Shengyin wanted him to leave while he was prepared to die. Gu Shengyin saw that Carlos was about to dawdle again. Her power of light was about to be used up, so she couldn't help but feel anxious. If she continued like this, the demons would kill her. She steeled her heart and directly jumped into the endless abyss behind her. Hurry up and leave. Don't make me jump for nothing. Carlos's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. She really jumped down without any hesitation? With a thought, an imperceptible golden light fell into the endless abyss. Carlos ignored the spatial crack that was about to close beside him. He looked at the countless demons in front of him with an expressionless face. The high-level demon was still sighing. As expected of the Saintess. It's a pity that the leader doesn't seem to appreciate it. Before he could finish speaking, cold sweat flowed down his face. The man in front of him didn't know when, but his blue eyes had turned completely golden. All the demons in the land of entrapment felt an endless amount of pressure. The low-level demons couldn't resist anymore and all knelt on the ground. The high-level demon was still holding on, but when Carlos glanced at him, he couldn't hold on anymore and fell to the ground. You want to revive Philosophy? A low voice came from Carlos's mouth. The purple-haired demon was already trembling. He didn't dare to answer. How naive. Do you think that you can fight against me just because you revive him? Carlos didn't need him to answer. He was talking to himself. Originally, for the balance between light and dark, I had already given you a way out. I couldn't be bothered with your little tricks. However, you shouldn't have. He didn't continue speaking. Instead, he looked at the endless abyss with a gentle expression. Since you've been causing trouble for so many years, I don't think there's a need to let you run around in the dark. He gently raised his hand, and an incomparably beautiful light slowly condensed in his hand. The terrifying power caused the space here to continuously collapse. The purple-haired devilish being finally couldn't help but yell, "You forced us to do this." The God of Light. As the ruler of this continent, you are known to shine in every corner. But what about us? Have we, the devil race, ever enjoyed the slightest bit of kindness from you? The God of Light looked down at him. From the moment you were born, you were destined to oppose the light. Do you dare to accept my gift? The purple-haired demon was speechless. Not only was the light god's gift not a favor to the demon race, but it was also the sound of death. 10,000 years ago, when the war between the light and the dark ended and Philosophy died, it was destined that there would be no more demons on this continent. The God of Light turned around and ignored the demons behind him. A golden beam of light that could break through the darkness of the land of doom for tens of thousands of years broke through the sky, burning all the darkness and evil into ashes. Endless soft halos of light sprinkled down from the sky, revealing the endless abyss that had never seen light before. A speck of golden light floated slightly. If one walked closer to take a look, they would discover that it was a barrier of light, and a figure was sleeping inside. The God of Light quietly stared at the peaceful Gu Shengyin. After a long time, he bent down and picked her up, Chapter 249. Gu Xingyin woke up to a strange fragrance. She opened her eyes and saw a beautiful scene that she had never seen before. Countless flowers that she could not name were blooming passionately, and the fragrance came from them. But this was not what surprised her. Those people with wings dancing gracefully in the air, sitting elegantly on a harp, were her eyes playing tricks on her? She blinked and called out to the system. "Host, there is no need to doubt. You are now in the heavenly realm of this world." The system replied. Heavenly realm? Hathaway's memory came online. Wasn't this the legendary place where the gods lived? Gu Shengyin looked at those people with snow-white wings. Were they really angels? Did she fail her mission and come to the heavenly realm after dying in the endless abyss? Gu Shengyin started to worry if she had failed her mission. Before the system could speak, it sensed something and shut its mouth. The god of light looked at his believer sitting there in shock, obviously not understanding the situation in front of him. He waved his hand to dismiss the curious angels and walked to the side of Gu Shengyin, who was still in a daze. Gu Shengyin sensed the person's aura and looked over subconsciously. Then she was stunned. She had never seen such a good-looking person. No, it should be God. Even if Gu Shengyin had never seen the true face of the god of light before, at this moment, she could confirm with one look that this strange man was the god of light. The power of faith that the system gathered for her showed its effect. Almost at the same time that she recognized the god of light, Gu Shengyin became excited. She opened her mouth slightly, and her delicate little face was full of confusion. She stared at the man in front of her, as if she could not believe that she was lucky enough to see God. For a moment, she even forgot to bow. Fortunately, the god of light did not pursue her improper behavior. In fact, he was in a good mood to see his usually gentle and calm believer staring at him in a daze. This was also a kind of affirmation of her charm, wasn't it? The chuckle from the god of light brought Gu Shengyin back to her senses. Her face flushed red as she hurriedly got up to apologize. The god of light extended a hand to support her. "No need to be so courteous." A familiar lotus fragrance lingered around Gu Shengyin's body. She was a little stunned. The lover of this life was actually a god? Shocked once again, Gu Shengyin followed the god of light's instructions and sat back down. The god of light laughed as he looked at the silly look on his follower's face. He looked extremely obedient, and there was no trace of the vigor he had when he sacrificed himself to save his companions in the land of woe. Thinking of this, the god of light became unhappy again. Although Carlos was just one of his incarnations, the god of light was still upset at the thought of her dying to save him. A noble god would never admit to being jealous of himself. Gu Shengyin finally digested the fact that her lover was her boss. She looked at the god of light again, and her mood became inexplicably better. With such a cheat in hand, in this world, what mission would she have to worry about not being able to complete? No wonder the system said those words before. The god of light saw her sneaking a glance at him, and then she sat there alone, pursing her lips and smiling. Her little face was flushed red. His mood also became better. Chapter 250. God. Gu Shengyin suddenly thought of something and her expression changed. "I had a companion who went to the land of calamity with me. How is he now?" The space-time crack was extremely unstable. She didn't know how Carlos was doing. The god of light hesitated. Gu Shengyin's expression suddenly became nervous. The god of light originally wanted to tease her, but seeing Gu Shengyin's slightly pale face, he couldn't bear to make her sad. His figure suddenly changed. His ankle-length hair shrunk to his waist, and his golden eyes turned azure. His face also gradually changed into the one Gu Shengyin was familiar with. "I am here, Saintess." Carlos smiled at her. Gu Shengyin witnessed all these changes. It would be strange if she didn't understand. There was no Carlos. He was clearly the incarnation of the god of light. "Carlos, it's you?" Gu Shengyin asked. "As you can see." The god of light smiled and returned to his original appearance. Seeing Gu Shengyin's shocked expression, the god of light once again threw out a bombshell. "Carlos admires Hathaway. Do you know about this?" Gu Shengyin's face suddenly turned red. Of course she knew about this. However, if it was just Carlos, she would definitely reject him without hesitation. However, Carlos was the god of light. What should she say? The god of light didn't give her a chance to answer. He spoke again. I, the god of light, Ulysses, love you. Are you willing to accept my feelings? The world of gods was just that simple and crude. He was never stingy with letting her know what he liked. No citizen of the Audi continent would refuse the love of the god of light. As a saintess who wholeheartedly served the god of light, Hathaway naturally wouldn't refuse. For Gu Xingyin, she had already accepted countless confessions from her lover. Everything developed naturally. When Gu Xingyin was hugged by the overjoyed god of light, she was still in a daze, thinking that this development was too fast. After that, the passion of a certain 10,000-year-old virgin made her unable to think about anything else. Gu Xingyin's first thought when she woke up was that the energy of a god was indeed incomparable to that of an ordinary mortal. She had no idea how long she had slept. His body was still a little sore. Thinking about it, he knew that there were definitely many scars on his body. At this moment, she was lying in a familiar embrace. Their skin was pressed against each other, and their warmth blended together. Gu Xingyin missed this feeling very much. She opened her eyes and was met with a pair of dazzling golden eyes. God? She was attracted by those abnormally beautiful eyes and couldn't help but want to reach out and touch them. The god of light allowed her hand to play tricks on his face. Call me Ulysses. Gu Xingyin blushed, but she still obediently called out, Ulysses? The god of light smiled. Out of respect, mortals had always called him God and did not dare to call him by his name. However, at this moment, hearing these words from Gu Xingyin's mouth made him feel extremely comfortable. The two of them put on their clothes, and the god of light walked through the heavenly realm with Gu Xingyin. The angels looked curiously at the mortal who was being gently held by the god. In their heavenly realm, there had never been a mortal. Gu Xingyin smiled at them. She could feel that there was no malice in their gazes. The angels were innocent and flawless, and they were abnormally beautiful. It was difficult for people to have a bad impression of them. The angels were especially sensitive to good and evil. They felt Gu Xingyin's kindness to them. Soon, angels flapped their wings and brought Gu Xingyin flowers, fruits, nectar, and other gifts. Seeing Gu Xingyin get along well with the little fellows he created and almost forget about him, a certain god of light's expression turned ugly again. Chapter 251. A certain possessive god secretly warned the angels, and they all left as if they were frightened. What's going on? Gu Xingyin was puzzled. The god of light said casually, Oh, maybe they all have things to do. Gu Xingyin was suspicious, but she didn't ask any more questions. The two of them spent a few days in heavenly realm without any sweetness until Gu Xingyin proposed to leave. You still want to go back to the Audi continent? The god of light frowned and seemed unhappy. The two of them had just established their relationship, and it was a sweet time. It was no wonder he was unhappy. I'm the Holy Virgin of the Light Church. I can't just disappear without a trace. Gu Xingyin didn't forget about Heidi's mission. Seeing that her lover was still unhappy, Gu Xingyin had to coax him. Anyway, you can see me whenever you want, and you can see me whenever you miss me, right? After coaxing and pestering, the man finally relented. However, before Gu Xingyin left the heavenly realm, he still gave her a hard time. Gu Xingyin was still gnashing her teeth when she returned. Gu Xingyin's return was no doubt a relief to the church's personnel. The Holy Virgin had mysteriously disappeared in the Icefield city, and they could only block the news and secretly send people to investigate. Now she was finally back. And this time, Gu Xingyin came back with good news. From now on, the Audi continent will no longer be threatened by the demon race. This news made everyone rejoice. After the church's personnel confirmed that there were no more demon race auras in the two cities, they began their journey back. During this time, no one asked about Carlos. Gu Xingyin also secretly asked around, and found that no one had any impression of this former commander of the Knights of Light. Saintess, the bath is ready. Heidi walked in quietly. Gu Xingyin loosened his guard and let her take off his robe. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, "You go out. I'll do it myself." Heidi lowered her eyes and left. The moment she closed the door, her eyes revealed undisguised shock. Just now, when she was undressing the holy maiden, she clearly saw that there were two ambiguous red marks on her delicate and fair neck. Such marks were obviously proof of love between a man and a woman. Heidi felt her heart beating like a drum. She was a little nervous, but more than that, she was excited. It was obvious that the holy maiden had encountered something extraordinary during the days she had been missing. If the holy maiden was no longer chaste, Heidi felt her whole body become excited. On the other side, Gu Shengyin was cursing a certain man's lack of self-control in her heart. The marks on her body were, of course, bestowed by the god of light. Not only did that man like to leave marks on her body, he also domineeringly refused to allow her to use magic to remove them. She had almost been seen just now. She let out a long sigh. "Are you cursing me in your heart?" A low voice came from behind her. At the same time, accompanied by the sound of flowing water, a body emitting heat pressed against her. "Why are you here?" Gu Shengyin was surprised. "Didn't you say that if I miss you, I can come and see you anytime?" The man chuckled. Gu Shengyin was speechless. Her next words were drowned out by the man's lips. Poor Gu Shengyin. The marks on her body had not been removed, and now there were more. Chapter 252. When Gu Shengyin came out of the shower, it was already a few hours later. The man had already left after her repeated requests. Heidi and Vivian walked in, and Vivian quickly took out a soft towel to dry her long hair. Heidi stood aside, wanting to say something. "What's the matter?" Gu Shengyin looked up at her and felt that her expression was a little strange. Heidi stood aside and glanced at Gu Shengyin. The woman who had just finished showering had a faint pink spread on her exposed skin, perhaps because of the steam. The layer of holy and dazzling halo in the daytime faded away, and the delicate and flawless face was exposed without reservation. This kind of appearance was indeed very tempting. Heidi sneered in her heart, and said softly, "I'm just a little curious, Saintess. What have you experienced these days?" Gu Shengyin thought of the days when she was in the heavenly realm with the god of light a few days ago, and only felt a little hot on her face. She coughed dryly and said, "It's just a small matter, there's nothing to say." Heidi looked at her jade face covered with pink, and was even more certain of her guess. She continued, "These days, Vivian and I were very worried about your safety, Saintess. Fortunately, you came back safely. Can you just casually pick one or two things to tell us?" Gu Shengyin frowned. Does this Heidi not understand what she meant? I said I don't want to talk about it, but she's still here. And she's worried about my safety? Gu Shengyin would believe it if she said that Vivian, this simple girl, was worried about her. Heidi was worried about me? She probably wants me to disappear forever and never come back. She glanced at Heidi and was about to speak, but the Saintess's supporter, Vivian, spoke first. "Heidi, how can you talk to the Saintess like that? The Saintess has already said that she has nothing to say. What do you want to hear?" Vivian was simple, but she was definitely not stupid. She always knew that her companion was not reconciled. She thought that after a long time, Heidi would admit the truth, but she didn't expect that after so long, she still didn't give up. Heidi was embarrassed to continue asking after being scolded by Vivian. She looked at Vivian and sneered in her heart. So protective of Hathaway. When you find out that this so-called Saintess has long lost her pure faith, let's see if you will regret your foolishness today. Gu Shengyin received a system notification. Heidi's hatred towards him continued to rise. He knew that she was preparing to deal with him. System, keep an eye on Heidi. I want to see what she's up to. Don't worry, host. Leave it to this system. The system was quite happy that it could be of use. With a 24-hour monitoring system, Gu Shengyin soon understood what Heidi had been doing these days. Inquiring about the past deposed saintesses and the consequences of being abandoned by the Holy See because they lost their chastity. The conditions for succeeding the saintess? Gu Shengyin received the messages from the system one by one. She closed her eyes and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, she recalled the day when Heidi undressed her. So that's how it is. He was afraid that she had discovered something. It was all a man's fault. Gu Xingyin hated it. However, it was good to beat her at her own game. Framing the Saintess of Light was a serious crime in the Holy See, enough to be punished with capital punishment. Letting the system continue to keep an eye on Heidi, Gu Xingyin began to silently wait for this woman to court death. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.